Welcome to a very interesting but also very difficult lock. It's a DOM cylinder and the model is IX. It's a 5-pin dimple lock with an additional jack pin. So here is the key. We can see the cuts on the key with a pretty good bidding. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here is the additional cut, so to speak, so the additional place that pushes the jack pin upwards. It's this little ball bearing which is moving a little bit. Not quite sure why it needs to move, but yeah, this interacts with a jack pin which is hidden behind another pin, which makes this jack pin really difficult to access. And it binds at some time in the picking process, which makes this a 6-pin lock with a hidden pin, which is also very difficult to set because it's difficult to feel, and it's binding really hard because it has a special shape. I can show you that later on when we got it. What makes this lock also difficult is of course the very special bidding with a long 1 and long 4 followed by a shorter key pin. And this lock has pretty tight tolerances and has very special pins inside. I played around with this lock for quite a while, took it apart and looked at the pins and checked out where the additional 6th pin is and so on and so forth to get used to this lock. And I know that there are very special pins inside, but it's still a very difficult pick for me. So I show you that the lock works, and then I will hopefully be able to show you a picking. But before we look inside, because I've installed a lamp on the other side so that we can see the pins. We can see the 5 regular pins in this lock, but we can also hopefully see the 2 jack pins. So here, right from the regular pin row, we can see 2 additional pins. The first is the pin that's protecting the pin behind it, and the pin behind it, that's the jack pin. You need to push upwards. This lock has key control features as well. So from the key you can see little dents every here and there. And for easier handling of the plug, when I played with this lock, I removed those jack pins. They are purely passive, so they don't affect the picking. And what I also changed is I removed 2 master wafers and replaced the key pins by longer ones so that I can get rid of the master wafers. Okay, enough talking. Let's start picking. I use this tension wrench here to tension the lock at the very right so that I can still look inside the lock, and I will cheat a little bit sometime to check if I've overset a pin, which is very easy to do on this lock. Yeah, and I pick the pins with this curved flag, and it barely reaches up all the way for the very short key pin. So let's get started. 1 is springy, 2 is binding. And it's open. Wow, that was a fight. That was 20 minutes in total with the introduction, so 16 minutes. I will try to do that a little bit faster. So let's try again. The lock should still work, and it does. It's locked up. Same procedure as before. Light tension and use this curved flag to pick the pins. So 1 is springy, 2 is binding. I could push it upwards, but I felt no movement on the plug, so no reaction from the core. 3, Maybe I could push it up a little bit, but no feedback. 4, springy, 5. No idea. Can't really feel much here. So 1, still springy. 2, there was a little click from 2. 3, nothing. 4 feels solid now, and it's deep down. Yeah, that's the very long key pin. And maybe 5 is binding now, but I'm not feeling much at 5, so maybe I could set it. I heard a little click, but let's see. 1, 2, heard a little click. 3, 4 is now binding, or it's really solid. And 5, well, 1, 2, I felt a tiny movement on the plug when I touched 2. So as the plug has turned now, I want to see if the check pin gives feedback. It's really hard to feel. So that's the first pin, that's the protection or protector, and behind that we have that check pin. So maybe I could set it, not quite sure, but I'll continue with the main pins. Touch 2 and the cord hand a little bit more. 3. 3 feels solid. 4 deep down feels also solid. And maybe 5. So my feeling for 5 is really weak. Start again with 1. 2 was the pin with the best feedback till now. Oh, and it's open. Look at that, 3 minutes. So that's pretty cool. My goal was to get under 5 minutes, but yeah, that's awesome. Okay, and of course pure luck. So now I will take it apart and we can honor the pins and yeah, the whole system. I lock it back up and have to remove the light ball here. Okay. So it's locked up, yeah, and I can remove the back nut here, and very easily, because I've not inserted this spring-loaded pin, so that it's easier for me to take it apart and inspect the lock, because I've done this more than once, and so it's yeah, much easier for me. Let's see, so we need a follower and the key. Oops, don't make a mistake now. Turn it like this. Okay, key pins are pointing upwards. Alright, so, oh, I have no pinning tray, just a second. Here we can see all the pins are in and working, and let me zoom in. So that's the check pin and that's the protection pin. At least that's how I call them. I don't know if this is the official name. So you can see how the check pin moves upwards when I insert the key. Yep. So, as I said, I had to exchange 2 key pins to get rid of the master wafers. So these 2, I think 3 and 4 are not the original pins, but I've used also one of these serrated pins. So the type of the pins is actually unchanged. Yeah, let's dump out these tiny pins. Okay, and now the drivers. That's one, it's a serrated. And we have 2, which is a standard. And then, haha, look at that, we have 3. That's one of these awesome wafer drivers. 3 as well, 4 as well, and we have that's the check pin driver. We have a look at that just in a second. And 5 is a standard, and I put that to slot 7. That's the pin in front of the check pin. That's the check pin, and or the stack for the check pin. That's the key pin, so to speak. That's the driver, and that's the tiny little spring. And here are all the other springs. Nice long springs. Yeah, that's the core, or the chamber in the housing. I don't know why we have this groove here on the side, but we can see the chambers for the regular 5 pins plus the additional chamber for the check pin. That's here in the back. Alright, then the plug. We can see, focus, we can see all the 5 pin chambers for the regular 5 pins. Then we have the chamber for the pin that is in front of the check pin, and here we have the hole for the check pin. And we have a lot of other holes here for pins that were in this core for key control, but I've removed them for easier disassembling and reassembling, but they don't affect picking, so they don't actually matter. Yeah, so now let's have a very close look to these very nice pins. Yeah, all the key pins, all the key pins are standard except of number 4. That's one of the pins that I replaced, but it's from the type, the same kind of pin with this overset trap with this serration. Then we have a very slightly serrated in 1, standard in 2. One of these very cool wafer drivers in 3. In 4, another one of these wafer drivers, and a standard in 5. Yeah, that's a pretty cool lock. Oh, so we have of course the 6th pin, the check pin. That's the key pin that is driven by this metal ball here, by this ball bearing. Then that's the driver. You can see it's a spoolish part, has a spoolish character with a sharp lip at the end, so that's why it is particularly difficult to set this pin when the core has turned more and more. So the more the core turns, and yeah, the harder this pin binds. And that's the tiny spring, so that also tells you that you don't feel much when working on this pin stack, so there is not much feedback because of this tiny spring. yeah, so that's basically it from this awesome lock. That was a really interesting experience to get used to picking this lock. And yeah, Stromi 90, I'm really happy that I could play with this lock, and I'm very thankful that you sent this to me. Yeah, I hope you found this interesting and enjoyable. Thank you very much for watching. Happy picking, and bye bye.